There's a lot of talk about how Clint Kubiak needs to bring the Frisco offense to New Orleans. But what does that mean exactly? Well, how about I tell you and then I show you? I'm Tim. Let's talk Saints. So we're going to look at how Clint Kubiak can bring that San Francisco style offense to New Orleans, and we're gonna call back a little bit on the John Benton video when he was talking about linemen being athletic. It's going to be very important in just a minute. But to give an overview of the San Francisco offense, we're going to kind of define it. It's Kyle Shanahan has developed. It's a West Coast style offense with a zone run blocking scheme, specifically a wide zone or outside zone, and they rely heavily on the run game to be established, to lead into the pass game, and then they're also going to use the passing game as almost an extension of the run because they do like to throw a lot of short to intermediate routes, especially with fast, physical, explosive ball handlers, whether they're running backs, receivers, or one of the best tight ends in the NFL. And New Orleans is going to try or should try to mimic that just somewhat. One thing I will say that needs to be mentioned too about this is what Kyle Shanahan also developed. It's we'll call it complex and simple. Complex in positions tend to have rules, for lack of a better word, but certain whether it's the blocking scheme for the offensive line or rules on footwork for like quarterbacks or receivers running routes or running backs to where they need to be in their aim points, the landmark, and we'll talk about that a little more in a minute. So that part's kind of complex, but once player gets all that down, it's sort of like just learning the playbook. It's part of it. You have to. There's certain things they have to be able to do, but once they learn it, it's kind of all built into the scheme that once you get onto the field and start running it, game time, it's designed that those rules set you up to understand the scheme, understand what you're trying to do. And Dennis Allen actually said this. I can quote him almost verbatim, but what he likes about it is once you get to that point, it's actually a simplified system where players don't have to think and they can play fast. Athletic, toughness, and playing fast is a huge, huge part of not only like John Benton talked about on the offensive line, but every player that's going to play offense in this scheme. And what Frisco has amassed over there is Christian McCaffrey, Debo Samuels, George Kittles, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Juszczyk, and various support players because they're going to throw. I don't know if they're still on the roster, but two guys. I don't think Ray McLeod is. I think he moved on, but I think Juwan Johnson is still there. Juwan Johnson, I believe is his name. Fast. McLeod's really fast. Other guys on that roster over the years that fill in those spots are going to have speed, going to be athletic. Some of them are going to have size. Some of them are going to have a little power. But they assemble a group of well-rounded skill players year after year after year in Frisco. Well, guess what? So did New Orleans. Because when you match them up individually across the board, they may have a better guy at one position. We may have a better guy. But as collective units, and we just ran through their guys, I tell you what, I'll take Alvin and Taysom and Juwan Johnson and Chris and AT and Rashid Shaheed. And some of these young guys looks like they're bringing on, like Kendre Miller, possibly Bub Means, 5th-round pick. The list goes on. As a total group, I will go to battle on the football field with our skilled players that we have assembled and put them straight up against the total group that Frisco has assembled. Tell you what, if you agree with me, hit the like button down there because I don't think there's any Saints fan that's going to look at what Frisco has done at receiver, tight end, running back. Again, collectively, not trying to match them up individually, but the whole skill unit and then look at ours. And I don't think there's any Saints fan in the world that's going to go, yeah, we don't stack up. No. Like I said, if you agree, hit the thumbs up down there because I don't think we're going to find too many Saints fans that would back down from that argument. One of the things that we're going to need to talk about, I'm going to try to do it quick. And I've actually have a video that I'll try to post on the end card at the end of this that kind of broke down what's going on with the zone blocking scheme. And real quick, 30,000 view. We'll just kind of get through this real quick. But when you're talking about an outside zone or wide zone run, the blocking scheme, offensive linemen are trying to move horizontally first and get the defense to move horizontally with them and then go vertical. Kind of really the only thing we need to specifically bring up to keep in mind when I show you a video in a few minutes. Inside zone, kind of the opposite, where the blocking scheme, they're trying to get vertical first and then pushing the horizontal. You'll recognize, and I know you've seen it before, if you've watched any of the zone teams in the NFL run the ball, because at some point you're going to look and see a really good running play where that offensive line it's almost like a door swinging open. And you get this kind of diagonal where they have formed the diagonal line where most of the defense caught behind in a running lane for the running back to go. We're going to have to mention split zone and split flow. On that diagram right there, you'll notice the tight end is actually either moving, and this may happen with motion before the snap or during the snap, during the play, where he's, in this particular example, he's going left, pretty much everybody else is going right. So all that's doing is just showing, instead of a wide zone run that we showed earlier where everybody's moving in play flow in one direction, you have one, maybe two players moving in the opposite direction. This is the one we really kind of have to talk about. Let me see if I can get it a little bigger for you. To get this work, the ball carrier, be it running back, wide receiver, carrying the ball out the backfield, whatever's going on, they have a landmark or an aim point. In this particular example, if you see that arrow that's kind of pointed at the bang, and I need to pull that off so you can see it a little better. That's kind of where he's aiming. Ideal world, when this play develops, that point where he's shooting for with that arrow pointed towards bang, there's space there. He blows through it, goes pick up big yards, scores a touchdown, offense wins the game. Hooray. If it's not there, he's got to bounce or bend. Bounce, basically finding space to the outside, bend, trying to cut back towards the inside. In any case, if there's no space available anywhere, that's where the bang comes in. He has to bang it straight ahead in there. The two golden rules, two of them for running backs, is they absolutely must, number one, gain positive yardage. And once they do that, number two, gain at least 4 positive yards. This is an offense designed to keep the chains moving. Stay ahead of the chains. Do not start getting back buried and down in distance. And if you've watched Frisco play, that's a lot of times when they get in trouble. 2nd and 20s, 3rd and longs. They're not bad at it, but it's not what they want to do. And if your defense, that's really where you can kind of get to them. And the key to all this, I think it has to be mentioned, basing, if you want to call it run heavy, but maybe more emphasizing the run so much to build the rest of your offense around, your offensive success around. They made the Super Bowl. They had one of the top offenses in the NFL, and they were the number one rushing offense. By contrast, the Saints could not make the playoffs with one of the easiest schedules in the league, struggled mightily on offense, and have to point out they were number 27 overall in rushing in the NFL. There's definitely a correlation here. And a guy like John Benton is a huge, huge part of it. Spent 20 plus years as a line coach in the NFL, from starting from 2003 to right now with New Orleans, the Rams, the Texans, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the 49ers, the Jets. and even had a run game coordinator title when he was with the Jets also. He's an important piece. That video we did last week talking about John Benton's philosophy, it's important. He's important. Rebuilding that offensive line and getting it back to a run blocking force, important. Very important. So watch the video. I know I was trying to blow through that real fast, but keep those concepts in mind, and we're going to talk about them. Be back in a second. We could talk all the live long day about the scheme, the zone blocking concept, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But let's go ahead and take a look at it. Use our imagination that what we're going to be looking at is what Clint Kubiak, or at least a version of what he's going to do with the offense this year in New Orleans. I'm going to point out on this first one, we're starting off wide zone runs because it is the backbone basis of what Frisco does, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be what the backbone basis of what we do. But right off the bat, it's an interesting one because they're breaking the trend of traditional roles. Frisco does this an awful lot. They have a running back split out wide somewhere. I think he's going to show up in a minute. But they got a wide receiver playing tailback and a tight end playing fullback. And by the way, that tight end is one of the very best in the league at catching the ball and terrorizing defenses downfield with it. But this is wide zone. And the first thing you're going to have to look at, the first thing you need to notice, and this is something we should see an awful lot of this year, but that offensive line is going to be sort of physical, but they're going to be athletic. They're going to be moving horizontally, then trying to get vertically and create some space for Devo to run through in the wide zone or outside zone. But lines move, defense can't keep up. Space he finds happens to be on the outside. He breaks it outside, touchdown. And there's plenty of different versions, but all of them share, if you're looking at that offensive line, moving horizontally, trying to get vertically, the running back coming through. Remember, bounce, bang, bend, finding the space to get through it. And a lot of times it doesn't even matter who the running back is, although you would prefer it to be a Christian McCaffrey. His backup can come in and basically do the same thing. And the offensive line, every single play on these, moving horizontally, trying to get to vertical, creating the space. I got a couple of these rolled up in here, but I think we're all getting the visual idea and pretty much of what's going on. Let this one play out because this is the ideal. His aim point landmark, they had a huge area of space for him to run through. And if not for 30 being some type of track star, that's a long touchdown run by McCaffrey. And move it ahead a little to the inside zone. And I'm trying not to do a breakdown where I start and stop this a lot, but have to do it here because I had a hard time finding an actual good representation of an inside zone run. Technically, this is more split zone than inside zone because they have a lineman right here. He's right under the little camera thing. If you can't quite see him, he's pulling and going right. And this play almost looks like it's designed to go right. But the offensive line and the tight end here, they're doing a blocking scheme that's very similar to inside zone because this time instead of going horizontally and moving to vertical, they're going vertical and more or less moving to horizontal. And when we talked about it earlier, that kind of door opening effect and pinning a large part of the defense behind it to give a running lane. Yep. It shows up beautifully right here because that's basically what you have. There was only one guy on the backside to worry about, and that pulling lineman. So technically, it is a split zone look. Took care of him, and once again, you have Christian McCaffrey in space making just huge chunks of game. Split zone, and I'm gonna break this one down a little bit too because I'll give you a spoiler on the ending here. wide receiver up top is running a reverse, but they show a flow of outside zone left. And keep your eye on what the offensive line does and the defenders right here, because they're selling a run to the left. These guys are buying wholesale on it. Most of them taking themselves out of play without the offensive line having to do much. And this is why I love showing this play to you, is because if you watch the offensive line, what's going to happen is there's a group of 2 or 3 of them that really don't need to do shit on this play, and they immediately wheel out, peel out of there, and they're headed up the right side of the field, getting extremely vertical, very fast, athletic as hell, getting in front of the wide receiver, who ain't slow, by the way, to hit a big play downfield. Right there. You got linemen busting out of there to convoy this guy that right down the right sideline. Beautifully designed play, beautifully designed concept, and showing how that basis, when they want to run and keep pounding outside zone runs, wide zone runs, and then when they can create something off that look with speed and athletic players, not only at skill position, but also at offensive line, this is what it can look like. And great job on the defense for recovering, but same thing here. Little split zone, little miss action going either way, and all of a sudden the defense takes itself out of the play and creates space by just moving out of the way, chasing ghosts almost in the opposite direction, and a ball carrier like McCaffrey's running right behind him, probably laughing to himself. And we're going to show play action here. And if you're looking at the offensive line, they're run blocking wide zone right. And once again, the defense is a wholesale buying what that offensive line is selling, including the play fake, like it's a pitch on this particular play instead of a handoff to go wide zone right. And everybody but a couple of guys in the secondary who are about ready to become totally screwed and helpless on this whole play is biting into it hook, line, and sinker. The edge defender just, by the time he realizes what's going on, it is far too late. Purdy has rolled out of that play action look. I'm going to stop it right here because he just hit a very wide open George Kittle. You only really had 3 guys back here to do anything about it. And the next best thing that happens on this play is, remember when we're talking about athletic and fast and talking about their wide receivers? They can be physical too, because there's only really 3 guys back there. 2 of them are covering those receivers. And those receivers immediately either go into a runoff or turn around and get into pass block mode. Somebody got trucked down there to help spring Kittle. 5-yard out on a play action rollout turns into a long touchdown. And I've got a couple more play action in here. In a little while later, it's going to be a little pass pro, which is basically no run component selling the fake. It's straight up pass protection. And what you start seeing is, when you get to that point in the pass pro, and I've already speeded up to get there, you start seeing them still working that kind of like they're doing intermediate to even sometimes check down range. This is a pass pro play where he ends up taking the check down, even though he had a couple intermediate receivers open. But what starts happening, and as we're talking, if you watch the screen, you're going to start noticing all of a sudden bigger shots downfield start coming in. And when they start coming in to wide open players that if they catch the ball deep, wide open, once again, big chunks of yardage, scoring touchdowns, hooray, the offense helps win the game. And ultimately, that's what we're talking about here. We'll let this play out and just close this out with there's a lot of components here we didn't talk about because this could very well turn into a 4-hour, 5-hour seminar on what Frisco does and how they do it. This is to give Saints fans a visual taste of what a lot of people have been talking about and how it's almost an escalation effect, the way Kyle Shanahan has schemed that offense and especially his play calling. Timeout. Let's talk about this play right here because talking about scheme and play calling. We're going to back this up for just a second because this is a prime example of being creative. Because you got a very fast human being in Ray McCloud going in motion across the formation. They fake a screen to him. They fake a screen backside. Meanwhile, the defense, especially the linebackers in some of the secondary, kind of trying to figure out what's going on. They didn't bite on the first one, but they bit on the second one. And here's the ingenious design of this play. Right here, right off the right hash, that guy coming out, that's their all-world tight end, who now nobody is paying attention to. He sneaks right up the seam, wide open, catches a pass, and houses it. So what we're really talking about here is development like that and the way the offense, the scheme, and the play calling that Kyle Shanahan has built in Frisco builds on itself and keeps an offense that is pretty much you didn't see in any of these plays any overly complicated run blocking schemes or pass routes. Sean was known for doing that, and it worked for Sean. But this is kind of simple in concept, but it appears to be just chaos for the defense. Creates, like I said, a lot of times they're chasing ghosts. They're chasing the play fake. They're chasing the decoy player and leaving, for lack of better words, studs wide open. It's really it's really that aspect that is what Clint Kubiak needs to bring to New Orleans, not specifically what they're doing in Frisco. And he's been very cagey. There's a reason why I haven't mentioned him yet in this conversation directly. He's been asked a lot about this, and he's very cagey in his answers, which I love. He is trying hard not to give anything away. But he said a couple of times, he's mentioned moving the offense to the skilled players he has. So I would like to think he's bringing this concept of this wide zone, using that run game, heavy run game, set up the play action, set up the intermediate pass, or use the intermediate pass as an extension of the run and to set up the running game, which they do in Frisco occasionally. But at any rate, this is a chain moving ball control offense where we want to get fast, athletic, tough ball carriers into space. I don't see any reason why he can't do that. I don't see any reason why he can't make it work with what he's got. But to tie this all back in to how important the offensive line and John Benton is, it's got to start there. The offensive line has to be fixed, which I think we're feeling pretty comfortable is it's on its way to being done. But it has to happen. They have to be able to run the ball for this whole basis of the system, however Kubiak puts his own spin on it, for it to work so the Saints can be the offense that gains yards, score points, hooray, help us win the game. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, correct? I think it is. So thank you for watching this one. Before you log off, drop anything in the comments. Tell me, do you think Clint Kubiak can pull off a Shanahan style, not necessarily the same exact offense, but that style of offense that we were watching film on, that it can be explosive and can just confuse the crap out of defenses? I think you can, but I want to hear what you have to say. So, till next time, peace out. Who dat?